$9. Not in a week, not in a month. $9 per barrel in a matter of hours. Oil ripped from $61 to over $70 a barrel. The most violent move in crude prices we've seen in months. And I'm going to tell you right now, most people watching the news tonight have absolutely no idea why this actually happened. The headline says, Trump threatened Iran. Fine. That's the surface. That's the simplified version. But underneath that headline, there are three things happening simultaneously in this market that almost nobody is connecting. And when you connect them, when you see the full picture the way a commodities trader sees it, you understand why some of the biggest oil traders on the planet are quietly positioning for $90 crude. In the next 20 minutes, I'm going to show you the exact price action. I'm going to show you what the options market is screaming right now that should terrify anyone who's short this market. I'm going to show you what Russia just said that everyone in the mainstream somehow glossed over. And I'm going to give you the one framework that tells you whether this is a short-term spike to fade or the opening act of a move that changes everything for the rest of 2025. But before we go deeper, let me set the table with three quick facts. If you don't understand these three things, nothing else in this video makes sense. Fact 1. Iran produces roughly 3 to 3.5 million barrels of oil per day and exports a significant portion through channels that technically violate U.S. sanctions. Most of it flows to China through shadow fleets and ship-to-ship transfers. This is not a small player. This is a top-tier global producer. Fact 2. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of the world's oil supply every single day. Over 20 million barrels move through a narrow choke point with no realistic alternative route. Fact 3. Global spare production capacity sits at historically thin levels, maybe 2 to 3 million barrels per day, mostly held by Saudi Arabia and the UAE. The world consumes over 100 million barrels per day, small spare cushion, massive choke point risk, major producer under direct threat. That is why oil moved $9 in a single session. Now let's talk about what actually triggered this. President Trump delivered a direct ultimatum to Iran, demanding changes to its nuclear program, ballistic missile development, and its support for proxy forces across the region. The message was unambiguous: comply or face consequences. Translated into commodity market language, that means geopolitical risk premium. Just days earlier, oil had been sitting in a compressed range. Traders were focused on demand weakness from China, oversupply fears, recession whispers. The market was leaning bearish, short positions were building, and then in hours, that positioning got obliterated because nothing moves oil like Middle East conflict risk. When the Strait of Hormuz enters the conversation, inventory reports stop mattering, rate decisions stop mattering, demand models stop mattering. The market shifts from pricing softness to pricing potential supply disruption. WTI surged past $70. Brent pushed into the low 70s. An $8 to $9 move in oil in a compressed time frame is seismic. But the futures price was just the headline. The options market told the real story. Call options exploded. Large block trades hit $80 strikes. Traders were buying $85, $90, even $100 calls. Either that's reckless speculation or it's informed positioning for escalation risk. Volatility spiked. The skew turned aggressively bullish. When uncertainty rises in commodities, traders buy insurance, and that bids up price. And oil never moves alone. Gasoline futures surged. Jet fuel crack spreads widened dramatically. Energy equities ripped higher. Airlines and transportation names sold off. Gold pushed higher as safe haven flows returned. This is what a geopolitical supply shock looks like when it hits the energy complex. Now let's talk about why Iran is the single most important variable in global oil right now. First, Iranian exports. A significant portion of Iranian crude flows through shadow fleets to China. If enforcement tightens, targeting shipping networks, insurers, refiners, you could see 1 to 1.5 million barrels per day removed from global supply. In a market with thin spare capacity, that is enormous. Second, the Strait of Hormuz. Through a narrow waterway flows roughly 1/5 of global oil consumption. Iran has repeatedly stated that if pushed into a corner, it could threaten or disrupt shipping through the strait. It doesn't require a full closure to shock prices. Harassment of tankers, mining operations, missile threats, war risk insurance premiums, any of these can materially reduce flows and drive prices higher. We've seen smaller actors disrupt global shipping lanes. Iran's capabilities are far greater. Third, the proxy network. Iran's influence stretches across Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and Syria. Oil infrastructure across the Gulf sits within range of missiles and drones. History has already shown how vulnerable critical energy infrastructure can be. This is why the market reacted so violently. Now let's talk about Russia, the piece most people are missing. Russia warned against escalation. On the surface, it looked diplomatic, but Russia benefits from higher oil prices. The Russian federal budget is built on oil and gas revenues. When Brent rises, Russian revenue per barrel rises, even accounting for discounts. Russia and Iran have deepened cooperation in recent years. Energy coordination, military support, financial alignment, and here's the critical point. If Iranian barrels leave the market, Russia is not going to ramp up production to offset the loss. Russia has no incentive to suppress higher prices. Higher prices strengthen its fiscal position. That means the global supply cushion is thinner than most assume. Now consider OPEC+. OPEC+ has been carefully managing production cuts. If Iranian supply is squeezed through sanctions or conflict, Saudi Arabia and the UAE could offset some losses, but not all. In a moderate escalation scenario, prices likely stabilize in the $75 to $85 range. In a severe escalation involving military strikes and retaliation, $90 or even $100 becomes realistic. In a Strait disruption scenario, prices could spike far beyond that. The downside, if tensions cool quickly, perhaps $5 to $7. The upside in escalation, $20, $30, maybe more. That's asymmetric risk. Now let's address U.S. shale. Years ago, shale would have capped this rally. But today, the industry operates under capital discipline. Companies prioritize dividends and buybacks over aggressive production growth. Lead times are long. Inventory quality has declined. Labor and service constraints exist. Shale cannot instantly offset a major Middle East disruption. So what matters now? Watch Iran's response. Diplomatic flexibility cools prices. Escalation pushes them higher. Watch actual sanctions enforcement, not rhetoric. Watch OPEC+ communications for emergency signals. Watch the physical market, time spreads, freight rates, and signs of tightening. And watch China. China is the largest buyer of Iranian crude. If Chinese refiners reduce purchases under pressure, real barrels leave the market. That would materially tighten global supply. Here's the big picture. For 2 years, oil's dominant narrative was demand softness and oversupply. But oil is not just a commodity. It is a strategic asset tied directly to geopolitics and global power. When geopolitical tension rises at a critical energy choke point, price models shift rapidly. We are entering a period of elevated uncertainty in oil markets, and uncertainty means volatility, and volatility means opportunity for those who understand what is driving price. Stay sharp, stay positioned, and watch the price.